Today's topic, I think, is vitally important, and it's one of those things that you should have discussed before you got married, before you got together. But a lot of people discuss where they're going to live and the kind of dog they're going to have, more than they discuss children and money and such thing. And so I think that it's a vitally important topic. So don't swipe away. Stay here. Listen up. Watch it again and again. And then take it to heart. I think whether you're mom or dad, take it to heart. I think that it's a vast conversation. So let's see what we can cover in 30 minutes.
Okay.
All right. You want to start or you want me to start?
How do you start?
So we work with a lot of people that in their marriage, there's money poop. So I think the first thing is you have to sort of figure out your relationship with money before you get married, which is not easy to do. And there's always lingering things. I mean, there's lingering stuff with us, but it's not like it's mine and it's yours or that kind of thing. But how you approach money and how you spend it and all of those things, that's something that comes from early childhood. And so you have to know where you are with it. And if you're not somebody who's good with money, you got to be really upfront with your partner, I think.
This might sound weird, but I think about attitudes about money I think about attitudes about money that my grandparents have had that happened during the Depression.
Right,
and
same
then they
here.
Pass it down to my parents, and my parents pass it down.
Right, because my grandparents are depression children as well.
I mean, and that was 90 some odd years ago, but it's this money poop and this money negativity that's like
totally.
That was such a big hole at one point that it's still like something that I think affects people that were born decades and decades later.
Oh, I think so, because then they hand it to their children, and then they hand it to their children, and it's a lot of like, no, that's mine, rather than it's ours. It's ours. We come together. So typically, the healthiest way to be looking at money in a marriage or partnership is that what you make is yours together. And so if you've got mom staying home, then, which is where we see the biggest issues, not in the fact that she's staying home, but in the fact that we've got a lot of dads that are like, well, then I'm the only one making money.
What are you doing?
What are you contributing? What are you doing to contribute? And it's mine, and I work really hard for it, and I'm exhausted, and I should get to spend it the way I want. And then you've got mom who's feeling disempowered at home because she doesn't feel like she contributes a whole lot. So I think it's definitely about like looking at the fact that you both contribute. And I don't know, what are your thoughts? Because you said you were a little daunted when you came into our marriage. So he married me and got 3 kids on the same day.
Yeah, and I was 31 when I got married. So I had over a decade of adulthood where I wasn't thinking about
sharing your money with anybody.
Yeah. And so it was an adjustment until I realized that once you're married, you're trying to achieve some of the same goals.
Right,
so
and I think that's super
together
important
as a team to make these things
So what
happen.
are your goals? And if you're not talking about your goals, you should talk about them. I think they're super important. I think it's super important, and it's more than just, hey, we want to go on vacation together, or, oh, we want to make sure the bills are paid. But what are your goals together? And if your goals together are sort of laid out, then you can always come back, because it's kind of like core value statement. You can always come back and go, we're not working towards our goals. And I think that too, there becomes this sort of entitlement situation where it's, it's mine because I earned it, and so I should get to say what I do with all of it. And that just breeds a lot of like resentment, distrust, feeling like women feeling horrible. And I see it definitely more with women than I do with men, but we have some men situations too that we can talk about. So I feel like that if you are somebody who's, not untrustworthy with money, and you feel like your partner is sort of playing this it's mine game, then you really want to have that conversation with about like what does that mean to you? What does it mean for you to have, say it's mine? What, these are your children too.
We both decided to create
Right.
the situation together.
So we should be working together for these children. We should be working together for what we have after these children. Good morning, Bridget. So it's about like really understanding a common goal, how you got where you got. Because here's the thing, we get into financial messes. Everybody gets into financial messes, but you can't go, it's your fault.
Well, if you both were on, if you both made decisions together,
right,
then you can't throw
it's
the other
both of
one
your
under the
faults.
bus when it goes awry.
It's both of your faults. So you have to then sort of like decide together, this is how we're digging out of it. One thing that we see often is just in eating differently. Mom sees a need for to eat better, and dad's like, but it costs so much money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that dad doesn't often see is that eating better makes you have a better quality of life. It makes people get sick less.
Well, that's when we were first married, and I don't really like pancakes, and I married into a house where everybody loved pancakes. And I got sent to the store,
like our syrup.
and I saw this syrup that was $2, and then there was the actual syrup that wasn't like the corn syrup, but the actual syrup that was like $12.
My kids
And I went to grab the $2 one, and it was like, oh,
what
I didn't
is
know.
this
It's like, wait, you mean this cost $12?
I know. It was an education for sure. But then in the end.
No, I understand it.
Yeah, he understood it. But in the end, afterwards, he was really confused. But then in the end, he was like, "Oh, I get it. This is better for you. The corn syrup stuff is just syrup that's not maple."
But it was one of those many things that.
But I think about too. I think about we have worked with one couple that he really likes big tattoos. And he's fussing at her about the coconut water she wants to buy. Mm-hmm. I'm like, let's have a conversation about that. Let's have a conversation about like how much this costs versus how much that costs, and really thinking about, okay, we have this extra income. What are we going to do with it together? Doesn't mean you have to, you have to go and do something that you both enjoy, but discuss how you're both going to utilize it and how you're both going to, especially if you've got extra. It happens at tax time. We have a lot of like, he took all the tax refund, or she took all the tax refund, or things like that. So it's really about communication, like talking to each other. And then I think then there's that, there's that other element of the partner that doesn't do well with money. And so then the other person is like kind of holding a grudge.
Yeah. Well, to back up a bit.
Yeah.
Oh. And then
it ran away.
And then it ran away.
Uh-oh.
Because I was about to say it.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. But oh yes, because one thing that we come across with couples when we're talking about this kind of friction about money is, he doesn't understand what I do, and she doesn't understand.
Yes.
He doesn't appreciate me. She doesn't appreciate me. So there's like some of it's like a lack of understanding what the other one does.
Absolutely, and I do see that. I have worked with a couple of women, and they're really unhappy in their marriage, and they're finding lots of ways to pick at their husband. And really, what it comes down to is they're unhappy because I had to have a straight conversation with a client once and said, "Listen, sweetheart, you have a really nice life. You never worry about whether there's money in the bank. You never worry about how your bills are getting paid. If you get a divorce because you can't sort this out within yourself, if you get a divorce, your life is going to look way different." Way different. So sorting that out, that appreciation piece, appreciating what your partner does. If you're the one that stays at home, or if you're both working even, appreciating the other person's role and what you both bring to the table is so important. So important. But we're going to talk about people that are bad with money. Like if you have been in a spot where your partner has not been good with money, I think that it's an important conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fun conversation, but it's definitely an important conversation to have. I think that when you have missteps, if you're the one who misstepped, then you have to be humble enough to say, I screwed up. And if you're the one who is on the receiving end of that, you have to be okay and say, I forgive you. I think, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I remember back when we lived in Idaho Falls, and I had this friend that didn't have a filter, and he kind of drove a lot of people nuts. And he came up to me after we got married, and he's like, yeah, when I got married, my wife had $1,500 in credit card debt. What did your wife have? And I was like, whoa.
Well, you married her anyway. Like, that's a conversation you should have before you get married.
And this is a guy that, had a couple of kids and have been married for 10 years. I'm like, why are you still talking
He's still carrying
about
that along. And I was thinking about this gentleman that we know, and he's like, I'm not marrying anybody that doesn't have a FICO score that's higher than 700. I was like, dude, give me single for a while. Find yourself. If that's your criteria, there's a problem there. You want to make sure that your money poop sort of sorts itself out, and you have to ask yourself, like, why do I feel that way? I think that when we're talking about couples, though, where the money is not spent in, like maybe somebody doesn't like how the money's being spent, then I think that it's definitely, you've got to communicate. You have to communicate. You have to have this conversation. You also have to, I totally understand the merit in saving and having a good budget and scrimping and all of those things, but do not play. I think you have to play regularly, especially if you're somebody who all the money is going into the budget and you never feel like you're playing. So you have to discuss, what things are you doing regularly to play together, so that the person, especially the person that's bringing in the majority of the money, isn't feeling like I bring it in and all I do is it goes into this black hole every week. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to have that conversation about what can we do to play, what little things, not giant things. You don't, want to spend giant amounts of money out of that, but when you're budgeting, put in some play money, even if it's $5, so for you to both go get a candy bar and ice cream cone together alone, so that you can reconnect and stay connected together. It's largely important when it comes to sort of connection. But then if you've got a situation where one person doesn't do well, because we see this too, well, he gives me an allowance or I give him an allowance. You really want to be careful with that. It's okay for you to both have an allowance, but don't put somebody on a leash that shouldn't be, and don't be mean about it. I think about your parents, and she just gives him money for she gives him money for his hair care products, for a lot of things.
And he doesn't. He's not
involved at all in the finances.
And then there's been moments.
And then he complains, and I think you can't complain if you're not willing to be involved.
Well, I can remember as a kid, it was like, don't tell your dad I bought this today.
Yeah. So not cool. You don't want to have those conversations, and do not drag your children into it. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Because that is you are informing their money thoughts and feelings for the rest of their lives. When you say don't tell your dad, then they have to start, they go, oh, money's a bad thing. Money's something that should be hidden. You don't want to give that to your children. You could say, I want to talk to your dad first about this, but you definitely don't want to do the whole don't tell your dad thing, because I think that's like that's a roadmap to divorce. I just gotta say, it's a roadmap to divorce. A lot of these money issues, when they're not sorted out, they become contentious, and it becomes a roadmap for divorce. It becomes those little stepping stones you're putting on that path. And so if you're really looking towards having a connected relationship where everybody is feeling good and happy about everything, don't go down that path. Don't go down the path of like, I make more or he makes more, and if you're the mom that stays home and your husband is not saying those things to you, then don't carry them. If your husband is not doing the don't, then don't carry that burden. Don't go, well, I don't do enough. Because you do. You're at home with those kids, and hopefully you're, keeping the house in somewhat order, and you're making sure his laundry is done, and you're doing your part. That's what often is like forgotten, is that each person has a role to play. And if one person's role is to go out and make the money, the other person's role is to take care of the home and family. And sometimes that looks like this, sometimes it looks like that. But both of you understanding that that's what the roles are, and feeling good about that's what the roles are, then that's a good place, because remember, you have choices.
I had a friend that always he used the word permission, like my wife won't give me permission to do this, or she gave me permission to do that, or whoop-de-doo, I got my tax return and she's going to let me buy a new printer, or something like that. And it was like,
permission.
The word, that's not the right way to frame that, I don't think, because really what it should be is, this was like counterproductive to what our goals were. We decided that we needed to do X, Y, Z,
right.
And this isn't going to.
Don't ever blame it on your partner.
But to say, oh yeah, she's not going to give me permission to do that. That sets up an idea of a relationship where one person's the mom or the dad and one other person's the kid. And
that's not the relationship you want to have with your partner.
And it's a way to absolve yourself of being responsible.
Right, absolutely. Oh, I'm not responsible, for sure. It's not a relationship you want to have with your partner. You don't want to have this sort of like, somebody's got the upper hand situation. And
most people are divorced now.
Yes, they are. Those people that that we've been talking about have all, these are like seeds that we all saw. I was thinking about my marriage with my ex-husband, and while he never did the, at least until that bitter end, like this is my money kind of situation, he definitely had really expensive tastes that were really hard sometimes. And that meant that, but at the same time, there was generally not anything that I could say, hey, I need this or I want this. And he wasn't like, no, you can't have that. I remember one time I just said, I really want this sewing machine. And he said, all right, I'll buy it for you next payday. And he did. And I remember thinking, okay. And at the time I was, I had friends whose husbands would have never done that. And so for all of the frustration that I had with my ex-husband, that was definitely not a huge piece. The money piece was there, but it wasn't in a derogatory way. The money piece was more in that, he enjoyed having steak like 4 times a week, and he drank a lot, and alcohol is expensive. And so I remember when I got divorced, and I was worried at first about my budget. And then when I started getting, like the months after, I remember thinking, I have so much money left. And it was because I wasn't buying steaks every week, and I wasn't buying all this alcohol, and it wasn't, it was in a, what was taken out of the budget situation. But, going back, really what should have happened was we should have been going to Alcoholics Anonymous rather than spending all that money on beer. But I think too that that these are just major conversations that need to be had. I think that people don't think about these conversations. They don't have the they don't have them, and then it breeds contention. And so I think that you really have to step back and think about, what is it that you want? What are you coming to together? And move from there, because otherwise it's not healthy. It's not healthy. So we're about done. If anybody has any questions that's watching, please shout. If you have questions afterwards, send us a DM or a PM, and we are happy to talk about those things. I think that really and truly money is a hot button, and it's something that you have to be open and honest with. And so you need to have those tough conversations. And they're going to be painful, and there might be tears if you haven't had them before. But really being in a spot where you are, you're open and honest is a good thing. I think that's all. Mm-hmm. You guys have a great week.